Morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. I am Sunday Michael Ogu, and it's a pleasure to have you join us on this lovely Thursday morning.
Yes, indeed. It is a beautiful Thursday morning right here in the nation's capital. I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Welcome to Daybreak.
Interesting time for us at the Trust TV. If you know, you'll find that right at the right hand side of your television screen. It's 1 year for us. It's an exciting 1 year.
A year that's flown by, actually. It has
You know,
actually
indeed,
flown
how
by.
time flies. Basically, all you need to do if you have any vision is to get started.
Exactly.
The Daily Trust Trust TV concept has been in the works for years. It wasn't something that just happened, but at some point we had to kickstart.
Exactly.
And as time will have it, here we are. A 1-year-old child, if you like, no matter how young, has come of age.
Exactly,
You know,
exactly.
He's becoming aware of his environment and the realities that he lives in, probably preparing to crawl, if not walking.
Exactly.
Already, and the rest of the growth would happen from this point
Exactly.
onward.
I mean, like, I think the first 1 year is always the most difficult. You know, lots of things need to be done, and a person can't actually do anything for himself. I mean, like, talking about an individual now,
Yeah.
I'm talking most of a television station. So lots of work had to be done, and you have to admire all the hard work that everybody has actually put in. You know, everybody pulled his weight, even more than his weight.
Absolutely.
You know, to actually get us to where we are now, and we can only go further.
Absolutely, we can only go further, and I can assure you, ardent follower of Trust TV, that we are not going to rest on our oars until we are high up there with the best in the world when it comes to serving you issues, you know, local documentaries, news, analysis of the happenings around the country. You can trust us, you know, to serve you the best and only the very best. We'll move on at this point to the highlight of today's news on the hour. Why NNPP couldn't fulfill requests for Shekarau's camp. Kwankwaso.
Insecurity. North youth protests at National Assembly demand NSA's sack.
And Black's Femi Court dismisses Kanu Singer's appeal, uphold retrial.
And electricity workers agree to suspend strike.
Now the news in detail. Presidential candidate of the new Nigerian People's Party, NNPP, Senator Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, has explained why the party couldn't meet one of the requests made by the camp of the former Kano State Governor, Malam Ibrahim Shekarau. He also said there is no rift between him and Shekarau, the Kano Central senatorial candidate of the party. Kwankwaso, in an interview with BBC Hausa, said the rumor circulating that both of them have grudges is not true, adding that there is nothing like that in the party. He was reacting to the news that the two-term governor of the state, Shekarau, may defect to the People's Democratic Party over an alleged failure to fulfill the terms of agreement they reached prior to Shekarau's defection to the NNPP.
And a court of appeal sitting in Kano State has dismissed an appeal filed against a high court judgment ordering retrial of singer Aminu Sharif Yahya for blasphemy. The court affirmed that the Kano State Sharia Penal Code of 2000 does not contravene Nigerian constitution. Delivering the judgment virtually on Wednesday, Justice Abubakar Muazu Lamido ruled that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria empowers states through the state assemblies to make laws. He ruled that Nigerian constitution recognized that there is freedom of religion, but does not allow adoption of a state religion. Yahya, who was convicted and sentenced to death by a Sharia court in Kano in August 2020, had earlier asked Kano High Court to squash the judgment.
Moving on, Northern youth under the aegis of Ariwa Youth Assembly on Wednesday protested at the main gate of the National Assembly, demanding the sack of the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Monguno, over ranging insecurity in the country. The youth argued that the inability of President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration to stem the tide of security challenges is not unconnected to the bad advisors he has had on security, adding that under the watch of Monguno, terrorists had been emboldened. Addressing journalists during the protest, Aya Publicity Secretary Aliu Mohammed maintained that Monguno had failed to foster the needed synergy among security forces fighting various criminalities, hence the reason the security agents have face-off. Recall that Munguno was appointed alongside former service chiefs, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Abayomi Olanishakin, Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, and Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Ibot Eket Ibas, and Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar in 2015.
Meanwhile, the leadership of the National Union of Electricity Employees has suspended the strike embarked upon by the union for 2 weeks. The decision was a fallout of the conciliation meeting between the federal government, led by the Minister of Labour and Employment, Senator Chris Ngige, and the striking electricity workers, which ended in Abuja on Wednesday. At the end of the 3-hour-long meeting, the workers agreed to suspend the industrial action, which has thrown the country into a total blackout. The workers expressed optimism that government will listen to the voice of reason and prioritize their welfare and well-being.
And moving on to reports this morning, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, NNPCL, says it loses over 200,000 barrels of oil to oil theft and pipeline vandalism on a daily basis. According to the NNPC, as a result, Nigeria loses about $4 billion in revenue every year. Ibrahim Ishmael examined the availability of petroleum products to Nigerians in Gombe State and the effect of the oil theft to the country's economy.
Last week, the Nigeria National Petroleum Company Limited (NNPC) launched a mobile application to fight oil theft, which is taking a toll on the nation's economy. To fight the menace, the NNPC said the mobile application will enable early reporting of pipeline vandalism for prompt action. An economist, Abdul Wahab Yusuf, said the consequences of oil theft and pipeline vandalism are enormous.
Oil sabotage affects economic activity. The government has to do more. If you look at the data where the government said that it has lost nearly $4.1 billion from oil theft, if we can imagine if such funds have been invested in, say for instance, health industry, maybe the health infrastructure, road infrastructure, education, and so on and so forth. So government has to put in place more measures, not necessarily using security forces, but it has to come up with measures to ensure that such losses can be averted.
According to a report published by the Cable, in the first quarter of 2022, the NNPC recorded 2.39 trillion naira as gross oil revenue and gas, while subsidy claimed 2.6 trillion naira, meaning more than 2/3 of the company's revenue was spent on subsidy. Experts are worried with the development.
If the amount that government is investing in fuel subsidy can also be invested in good roads, in infrastructure, in health facilities, this will also help to improve growth and development. Fuel subsidy and other subsidy reforms, the rich tend to benefit more than the poor masses.
Despite government's claim of financing subsidy, Nigerians still complain of hike in price of petrol, with some Okada riders in Gombe State saying the product is available, but at an exorbitant rate. A litre costs between 210 naira, 215 and 220 naira. The price of a litre ranges between 200, 210 and 215 naira, but no queues at the filling stations. As the largest oil producer in West Africa, Nigeria's economy has solely depended on oil revenue. But over the years, Nigerians have been experiencing difficulties in accessing oil and gas products. From Gombe, Ibrahim Ismail reporting for Trust TV.
The cost of carrying out the forensic audit of contracts awarded in the Niger Delta region continues to rise, as the Federal Executive Council approved an additional 765.97 million naira from the project. Minister of the Niger Delta revealed this to newsmen at the State House Abuja after the weekly meeting of the cabinet. The amount, he said, would cover the additional works done by the forensic auditors. Kende Amodu reports.
For the forensic audit, a lead consultant was appointed to work with 16 other field auditors at a total contract sum of 1.786 billion naira. The project has since been concluded, but in the course of carrying out the work, the auditors had to deal with many more projects than were initially envisaged.
The exercise also took an additional 7 months. The total number of additional projects considered by the auditors was 3,773. So for reasons of the additional number of projects and the additional time taken, Council today approved a revised additional sum of 764,974,975 naira 50 kobo.
Meanwhile, another project which has accrued additional cost is the compensation and resettlement of communities affected by the construction of the 700 megawatt Zungeru hydroelectric power project.
The total sum of 2,740,000,000 naira, which will revise the subsisting amount from 19,640,000,000 naira to 22,380,000,000 naira.
Nigerians are concerned about the dip in power supply in recent times, despite promises made by the power minister that the country would be able to generate and maintain 5,000 megawatts of power from the 1st of July.
We've gone very far with that, and I believe it's for that reason that we're able to reach up to 4,600 as of yesterday. In the morning, this morning, it dropped to 4,100. So this is what is happening. You will be experiencing this fluctuation due to all these issues around gas to power, because gas is not something that we control directly. You have to pay them. You have to pay gas. They will not give you gas until you pay. So we are looking at ways to solve that issue. It is the reason why we are unable to reach that 5,000 we promise you by July 1st of this year.
Minister of Information Lai Mohammed is also addressing the issue of the growing inflation rate in the country. The minister gave assurances that government was trying to find its domestic means of stemming inflation. A solution to the global phenomenon varied from government to government. From State House Abuja, Kehinde Amodu, Trust TV News.
Moving on to other reports, traders in Jos, the capital of Plateau State, have expressed their support for the government's decision to rebuild the Bond Jos Main Market. Some of the traders who made this known in an interview with Trust TV in Jos decried calls by some individuals and groups to stop the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding with the commercial bank to rebuild the market. Ado Musa completes the report.
The popular Jos Ultramodern Market, banned on February 12, 2002, has remained one of the most tragic occurrences to befall the state. The market got burned during the administration of the former Governor Joshua Darie and has been abandoned for almost 2 decades. However, soon after the state government entered into agreement with a commercial bank to rebuild the market, some individuals and groups protested the government's decisions to rebuild the market on the grounds that majority of people of the state are not aware of the terms and conditions reached with the financier of the project. But traders in Jos have called on those against the rebuilding of the market to allow government to commence the project. Emeka Okaro, a trader in Abuja market, said it is better to allow the government to rebuild the market than to abandon it.
I fully supported the rebuilding of the market, and every trader also we want to also support that.
Chairman of Abuja Market, Adam Abdulwahab, on his part said he doesn't see anything wrong with government effort to rebuild the market, saying such efforts are long overdue.
all other governments that will come in will promise they will build it, but nothing has this. If not, this government now want to embark on this, and so we are encouraging them to go ahead and just to enlighten people that do not aside the financial benefit or economic benefit of that kind of project. So that's my own take on it.
Christiana Onyiloye, a trader selling foodstuff around Terminus Roundabout, also said the building of the market is for the benefit of Plateau citizens, as it will create job opportunities for the teeming people in the state.
I wish the government to build it because everybody, even the government, the masses, it will be valuable for everybody. Not only the marketers. There are some people out there, they get job inside.
Many are hopeful that if the government succeeds in building the market, it will provide more revenue for the development of the state. From Jos, Ado Musa reporting for Trust TV.
The Bauchi Police Command has warned against the acts capable of breaching peace of the state, saying that anyone found wanting will be dealt with according to the law. Now, the police public relations officer, Ahmed Wakil, disclosed this in an interview with Trust TV on the recent killing of a teenager by her lover in the Al-Kaleri local government area of the state. Adam Imam reports.
The accused person were arrested at Mayari village after a report to the divisional police headquarters in Al-Kaleri local government area that a 13-year-old girl has been missing. The suspects were immediately arrested and interrogated, where one of the suspects confessed to have killed the 13-year-old.
The woman that procured the abortion and the mother will be charged for conspiracy, while the two principal suspects, Ado and Mukaila Ado and Muazu, will be charged for culpable homicide, section 221 of the Criminal Code procedure.
Both residents, however, lamented on the incident, describing it as barbaric, sad and unfortunate. They call on parents to always be vigilant and keep a watch on their children at all times amidst the dwindling state of insecurity.
That is why sometimes people are calling to the entire community, to the general community, that they should be always monitoring their watch, especially female or girl children.
What this portends is that the incessant occurrence of this kind of incidences in Bauchi State in the recent past raised a serious high note as to the security and safety of minors or children, particularly in Bauchi State. For whatever reason the perpetrators of those acts are doing so, the authorities should and must find a way of ending it.
This is a very unfortunate and pathetic incident. The state authorities need to address these atrocious acts. I think they are not doing enough in terms of punishment for such crimes. Surprisingly, you will see the culprits in our midst again, despite the crimes committed. Government really needs to sit up. More often than not, you realize that parents are no longer taking note of the whereabouts of their children, especially the females, who are vulnerable. The society is the way it is now because parents are very careless nowadays. They should change for the sake of well-being of their children, especially the girl child.
Some community leaders assure the security agencies of their support and collaborating to report any unusual activity that can lead to identify criminals in the society. Adam Imam, Trust TV News, Bauchi.
Fake and substandard products can be found in almost every category of goods, ranging from drugs, electrical and electronic appliances, spare parts, among others. In this report, Kabir Law finds out how the substandard product menace in the country has crippled some business activities and caused producers to reduce the quality of their product. The report.
So this is what I have in my office. So with this, any form of substandard can be traced in this machine.
Substandard products are simply out of specification products. They are always below the regulatory standard set for making such products. A cross-section of dealers of both spare parts and electrical appliances have called on government and other stakeholders to sensitize the public, especially those in the rural communities, on which goods to buy and how to confirm their authenticity. Uche Nwosu, who sells electrical appliances, wants the government to tighten checks on imported goods at the ports before they are distributed in order to stem the steady influx of substandard tires, spare parts, and drugs in the country.
This side of the country, because of the porousness and also nonchalant attitude of those who are in the hem of their face, that allow anything to flow into the country. So that is where you talk about substandard and standard products. And I think the only way we can checkmate this issue of substandard is from the entry point, because sometimes they allow some of all these things to come into the market, to enter into the market, and before you know it, people who are not, people who are ignorant of those substandard, you will see them buying it. And as a result of that, that is where you have some fire outbreak here and there. But in this market anyway, we have a measure that we put in place to checkmate some of all these substandard. And if we are culpable, we have our internal mechanism, how we deal with those that are found guilty.
A spare part dealer, Ezekiel Ernest, is of the opinion that there is every chance a substandard product may not just bore a hole in one's pocket, but can also be dangerous physically.
We are dealing with quality products. Many of us export from China direct, and we are giving the best products in Apo here. You know, like foot mats. Let's come chop foot mats. We identify original foot mats. It can last for you 4 to 5 years in your vehicle. But when you come to all these fake ones, before 1 to 6 months, you start breaking. Do you understand? Some protector.
He added that to understand what constitutes substandard products and find out how they turn out to be a menace to society, people need to appreciate the value of standards and important they are to the society. Kabir Lowell, Trust TV News, Abuja.
And moving on, train shuttle services between Kano and Nguru local government area of Yobe State have continually sustained century-old trade and commercial relations with the ancient city. Over time, however, this major trade route appears to be dying due to lack of maintenance of the locomotives now operating 3 times in a week. In this special report, Trust TV's Northwest correspondent Idris Jibrin travels to the northeastern town of Nguru to examine what remains of the once important train station in northern Nigeria.
After waiting for several hours to witness the arrival of the last remaining train to Guru station from Kano, bad news arrives that the train will not be coming today for operational challenges.
It's the problem of diesel that led to the suspension. But before then, we are running regularly.
Although disappointed, but not as much as the owner of these goods, who now has to resort to what he called the hard and most expensive way to get his goods to Kano.
The train is fine, as they told us, but there is the problem of diesel. That is why we had to use this truck to transport our goods to Kano.
Guru Rail Station was constructed in 1930 by the colonial administrators, initially transporting agricultural produce to the southern part of the country for exports to the United Kingdom. Many years after the Nigeria's independence, train from Guru maintained local running across many parts of the country, effectively creating jobs and boosting the economy.
This train station is important to us. It used to carry people and goods from Guru to Kano and to other parts of Nigeria, and it also creating jobs for our people. This is an old train station that is used to be called Guru Terminus, from where we transport livestock, agricultural produce, granite, and so on to several countries of the world.
Hide and skin.
But that has changed. Today there is only one train with about 12 coaches operating between 1 to 3 times a week from Guru to Kano.
We do carry people and goods from Guru to Kano and from Kano to Guru, usually 3 times a week. And we never had any problem until this time.
Despite being the cheapest and most secured, especially for small-scale business owners, inconsistency, poor government policies, and lack of maintenance seems to be making things worse for traders using these train services.
Some 30 years ago, this place is considered as a hub of trading activities. Trains from different parts of the country do come here on a daily basis. As of today, there is only one train coming here from Kano and going back to Kano from this place. And even that train, authorities are telling us, does not belong to Unguru station. It was borrowed from Mina, Niger State. Now, as of today, there is only few coaches existing in this place. The station is almost gone. There is nothing remained here. Idris Jibrin, Trust TV News, Yobe.
And that's a wrap on the news and news reports on this leg of Daybreak this morning. We'll take a short break, and when we return, we'll take a look at the front pages of the newspapers. Do stay with us.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve their sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
But in a situation where you find that they look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
Welcome back, and thanks for staying with us on Daybreak right here on Trust TV. Well, it's now time for us to take a look at the front pages of the dailies this morning and see what the offerings are. We're going to start with the Daily Trust newspaper, and it carries this major headline on the front page. 2023 e-transmission of election results has come to stay, says INEC. And results riders here. They say 27 by-elections pending. And what we have learned from Kenyan presidential poll. Debates good for democracy. And the other headline on the front page of the Daily Trust reads, power outage as TCN workers strike crashes electricity grid. And the riders here, union suspends action, and why we couldn't meet 5,000 megawatt target since July, says the federal government. Details of that on page 22. Further headlines here, ISWAP abducts 6 farmers in Borno, demands 5 million naira, and NMPP backs Media Trust 2023 election debate. Troops dislodge bandits camp, rescue baby, 6 female hostages in Kaduna. And at the top of the front page there, below the masthead, $418 million Paris Club refund. Governors tackle Malami, say fraudulent, self-serving. Why Shekaro's associates failed to secure NMPP's tickets, says Kwankwaso. Details of that on page 31. And Niger, Benin, Togo owe Nigeria 5.8 billion naira for power in 2022. Now that is attributed to a report. Now these are the major headlines on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Quite interesting stories there, Sunday. One that actually catches the eye is the last one here that I just read. Niger, Benin, and Togo owe Nigeria 5.8 billion naira for power in 2020. I mean, like, that's quite interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting.
Because a lot of people have actually raised this argument that we don't have enough, and we're still giving it to other people.
I think the argument had always been made that if you are a big brother, you don't have to have enough.
Okay.
Before you are able to share.
Oh, really?
Which sort of makes some sense.
Okay.
I don't know whether to blame the creator for being too partial by endowing this country with so much, and yet having neighbors that are practically struggling to eke a living, battling all kinds of natural disasters or phenomena that had made them completely dependent on the progress and success of Nigeria. So whilst it may appear that we haven't enough, to go around, we have to find a way to share what we have.
Yeah, but we're supposed to get paid for it, and according to this report, we're not being paid for it.
I'm sure even the amount that is owed the generating companies in Nigeria far outweighs whatever our neighbors owe. I think the dilemma is the recognition that the world has gone through so much in the last 2 years, and that has really worsened the fiscal conditions of these countries. And the implication for that is that you will be lacking behind on so many of your responsibilities. This is one of those. My thinking is, on a scale, they would want to say, this is our big brother. They would never put us to shame. They would never flog us in the open. We can as well extend these obligations a little longer.
Okay.
Let's try to see how we get in the vitals, the foods, the pharmaceuticals that are important to keep our people from.
But still, a debt is a debt. For how long is too long? I mean, like, this has been since 2020. It's 2 years down the line now.
I'm not sure what the payment modalities are for these things. Maybe the report will reveal a bit more of how that is. I doubt if it is in the form that we have in Nigeria, where you basically you pay before you get the service, or you get your bill, usually after 30 days. But this is more like a bulk purchase agreement. I'm sure we'll be able to sort it out. The Nigerian authority will tell you it's a family affair.
Yeah, well, just like you've actually put a blanket on everything when you said we are the big brother and we have to support our younger
big
neighbors.
brother come with a lot of responsibilities. Yes, so I'm sure this is one of those. It's difficult to explain these things, but I mean, in the face of our lack, we have seen Nigeria raise relief materials to places that have been hit by disaster. We came through for Haiti, no matter how small you think that is, and a number of places where there had been one kind of natural disaster. We are basically living with several forms of disasters, if you like, man-made and natural. But when these things happen across the world, it is vital that you show that camaraderie.
Yes.
And somehow we've been able to do that.
Actually, we are human before anything else.
We are, absolutely.
Definitely.
And moving on to the next paper for this morning, we'll be looking at the Punch newspaper. And on the front page of the Punch this morning, we have PDP crisis, peace threatened. Wike Atiku's men disagree over IU. Clearly, it does appear that this IU's embroidery will not go away anytime.
It's not going quietly.
Anytime soon. IU must go for talk to proceed, governor's men. IU won't resign, says PDP theme. It seems devil has entered the PDP, says George, as negotiators disagree over venue. Go to your village. Elections are not won in Abuja hotel, Wike tells candidate. It's firestorm there. We're not sure when that is going to go away. And very interestingly, you have the picture of the frontrunner of the APC, Asiwaju Ahmed Bola Tinubu, right there with former president. Some people like to call him the number 12 or 13th? There with Asiwaju on his nationwide consultations. And in other pictures, you'll find him there with the Ogun State governor and other associates of the APC candidates. It will be interesting to get the details of what those conversations were around, and I'm sure in due course we would hear more from there. APC supporters hold carnival as Tinubu visits Obasanjo. And we have right there, ASU begins consultations on next move. You find that story on page 8. Great-grandma collapses, die while climbing Lagos Bridge. Wow. And northern youth protesting security in Abuja. Other stories on the front page, we have electricity workers call off strike, businesses count losses, Chenkos, Discos, owe bank 835 billion amidst crisis. We must begin to find ways to solve this problem, otherwise the power generating company may have to go under. $480 million refund. Governors knocked Malami over commission. And how transactional firms swindles Nigeria's orders of over $3 million. You'll find the details of that story on page 29. We were just talking about debt. We have seen the part of the Nigerian firms, but we saw that somehow the government was able to negotiate a truce with the electricity workers.
Yeah, albeit temporarily. I mean, they said they're suspending it for 2 weeks, and we see how it goes from there, what happens between now and the 2 weeks if their demands are being met. And we hope we don't experience what we experienced yesterday. Yes, again.
It's not funny.
It wasn't at all.
It's not. But something the government showed yesterday that was instructive was the swift with which they moved.
Yes.
To nip this in the bud.
Exactly.
Because it showed clearly a great deal of responsibility. The Minister of Power yesterday was saying the Labour Minister was unable to be at the council and the Minister of State for Power because they were directly involved in the conversations and negotiations. And I think that is the kind of move. Those are the kinds of activities that Nigerians would want to see at this particular point.
But some might argue that there was an opportunity for the federal government to have been proactive in stopping the strike completely. I mean, like not having us go through what we actually went through yesterday before they negotiated, because I think these terms were given, ultimatums were actually issued before the strike action came over. So a lot of people argued that why didn't they stop it from happening in the first place?
That's true on the one hand. It does begin to feel, when you do a trend analysis, that we do not take warnings seriously until the reality stares us in the face, and then we begin to run hectic scatter. Like you rightly pointed out, if we had taken the initial warning signs seriously, this would have been negotiated. There wouldn't have been any need to have put off the electricity transmission line for whatever reason, before going to negotiate whatever it was that became a truce.
Well, let's keep an eye on that situation and see what happens between now and the 2 weeks, the reprieve that we've actually gotten. So we'll move on now to the Nation newspaper, which carries this major headline on the front page. Governors hit Malami on $418 million Paris Club payment. They say AGF action self-serving and will pursue matter to Supreme Court. Now, that is a major headline on the front page of the Nation newspaper. Talking about politics now, it says 2023, Tinubu visits Obasanjo amid pomp. Huge crowd at ex-president's library complex and stadium. APC candidate scores Abiodun high. Moving to the top of the front page now, federal government, why we failed to meet 5,000 megawatts target and electricity workers suspend strike. Talking about politics now, PDP taken over by the devil, says Bode George. Bawa, EFCC secured 4,430 convictions in 19 months. And another headline here that says, Lagos Blue Rail Line to begin test run in December. Now, and of course, there's another headline here that says, exposed kidnappers get 50,000 naira, Akeredolu tells residents, and 3 cult suspects held. Details of that can be found on the Nation newspaper this morning. Now, one interesting thing I've just noticed on this is the conviction rate. The statistics being thrown about by the FCC chairman. 4,430 convictions in 19 months. How good is that?
Well, that is surprising to me, if you like, given the number. I'm beginning to wonder how those convictions were secured, whether they were joint pronouncements. Or I'm not sure, perhaps we need more explanations around how they were able to do this.
Well, he did say it took 19 months to actually do that. So.
I mean, 19 months, 4,000 cases, if you divide that by the numbers of days, it does appear like they were securing one conviction, or 10 convictions every day. That's huge. I want to commend that. I don't know how they were able to pull that off, but to other Nigerians, they think that these convictions are around issues that cannot or does not appear very significant. For instance, in the mind of a Nigerian, a conviction around what's going on with the immediate past accountant general
yes.
would appear more significant. Some of those high-profile cases would appear more significant and sending wide-reaching messages than a conviction you secure for a Yahoo boy.
Yeah, because the headline wasn't really specific. It just says 4,430 convictions, not high-profile convictions. It doesn't go into detail. Maybe the story goes into detail as to the nature of these convictions. But what's alarming is these are the number of convictions, not the number of cases being tried. So it gives you an idea of how large the scale of corruption actually is when you look at it from this perspective. Because if these are the ones that were convicted, where we don't have the number of the ones exactly the ones that have been tried, or the ones that have been tried and even acquitted, and it just goes to show you the volume of corruption that actually goes on.
Nigeria is a big country. We are talking about 200 million people, 60 million of those between the ages of 18 and 35. And that is the bracket where you pick most of these guys who are involved in this. And you are talking about an unemployment rate and underemployment rate put together of around 40% of that 60 million who are eligible to work. Then it means that you have a huge reservoir of redundant youth that could take to any kind of vices. So the pool is huge. 4,000 is just scratching.
It's just scratching the surface. That's the problem. I mean, like that is the cause for concern here. Well, at least we should congratulate the FCC.
Yeah, but they've done very well by every standard. But what other nations do, which will be the next step for them, is learning from these convictions. They are not enough to just celebrate merely taking these convictions. I hope these criminals were properly debriefed, and by so doing, we can then begin to take steps to prevent these things. It's far more or less expensive, if you like,
of course,
to prevent the crime from happening, rather than spend taxpayers' money chasing these guys.
Prosecuting these cases.
And
yes.
chances are that you're probably getting them in after they had spent the proceed of this crime.
Exactly.
I mean, if somebody had carried out some kind of advance fee fraud and had gotten some proceed for them 3-4 years ago, and you are just picking that person up now, there are chances that he would have squandered those sums.
The chances are actually
and then you'd
very
have
high.
spent public funds taking this person to a public court, who
means-
sits under a judge who takes salary from a public purse.
Which means it's actually more expensive.
Keeping him in jail and feeding him with public money. But I hope it's not the type that the government told us they gave to one of the leaders. That translated to about 1 cow per day. But the truth is, they continue to feed off public funds, and all of this together adds up overall to the cost of pursuing crime. So if we could stop the process that make them commit the crime, and on the other hand, provide jobs that engage them productively, we would have been doing far much more than just securing conviction. But all the same, kudos to the EFCC.
Exactly.
And moving on to the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian newspaper has a very elaborate one on its cover. Nationwide blackout, 3 billion naira lost to transmission company of Nigeria strike as grid crashes. Electricity workers suspend industrial actions. Will discuss issue notices. 2 discos issue notices on darkness, urge communities to safeguard installation, why we can't generate 5,000 megawatts of power, and that's by the Minister of Power yesterday after the Federal Executive Council meeting. And there you find on the front page pictures of the National Grid Control Center in Oshogbo, and of course the APC presidential flag bearer, former President Olusegun Obasanjo, and the Ogun State Governor, among others, yesterday during his visit to Obasanjo in Abeokuta. 8 years after leading Buhari to Obasanjo, Tinubu meets ex-president for own ambition. Lagos Blue Rail Line nears completion as engineers launch final track beam. You find the details of that on the Metro page 8. Restructurings won't lead to succession, says Okotie. The details of that you find on page 3. EFCC raid on BDC operators behind Naira rise against the dollar. And this is coming from the EFCC chairman. Antimicrobial agents for treating drug-resistant tuberculosis enters clinical trial. I'm sure a lot of people will be looking forward to the outcome of that claim. Everybody looks forward with positive anticipation. Rivers women protest against destruction of farmlands by suspected herders. And you'll find that story on page 29. Interesting stories there on the front page of The Guardian. But one of note for me, Ibrahim, would be the EFCC raid on the BDC. It has proven to be a very important raid. We've seen the Naira, strengthen back.
A little bit.
A little bit, yeah. It gained 17 Naira after a week and then dropped back to 15 Naira thereabout. But the thing is, what's important is it sort of halted what appeared like a downward spiral. It was just a free fall. You wake up every day and it's hitting a new level. And we started asking, what exactly is driving this whole thing? What are we doing? Why is everybody, gunning for the dollar?
Well, actually, you see, the thing is, yes, just like you said, the FCC did a good job reading the BDCs and having the Naira strengthen up a little bit. But the thing is, a lot of people are of the opinion that this is just a stopgap, a temporary measure, that other long-term plans need to be made in order to strengthen our Naira.
Absolutely.
That is just the main thing.
Absolutely.
It's just simple economics. Once you import more than you can actually export, then definitely you have a problem with your local currency. And we're not manufacturing enough. We're not producing enough locally. We import a lot of things that we consume. So basically we're a consumer nation, and so what bargaining chip do we have? to be able to say, okay, fine, this is what our Naira will stand on. The Naira has no foot to stand on, and that is the major problem that we actually have. So raiding BDCs, yes, you can have 1-2 day strengthening of the Naira, but for how long will that last?
Absolutely. You more than nailed it. You know, if we have to bring the analyst perspectives into focus, they've talked about the shortage of the dollar, largely because we are not exporting enough. We are depending on imports for virtually everything, including those that we can produce back home. And that is not to say people are not making efforts to produce. There is the economic headwinds that are faced by manufacturers, including business owners, the cost of diesel, the cost of aviation fuel, the problem of insecurity, which is also stopping people from going to the farms where some of these raw materials are coming from. So it's a difficult scenario.
All right, so the next newspaper we're going to be looking at is Nigerian News Direct, which carries this major headline on the front page. It says, electricity grid collapse to worsen over NNPC's cut in gas financing. And that is on page 2. Lagos Blue Line rail nears completion as engineers launch final track beam. TED Fund set to fund facilities for promoting diaspora exports. And moving on to the top of the page, on top of the masthead, we talk about politics. 2023, Tinubu in closed-door meeting with Obasanjo. And IGP honors SP Daniel for rejecting $200,000 bribe. FG 70% broadband penetration target by 2025 achievable, says MTN. Now, these are the major stories on the front page of the Nigerian News Direct. One story that we've actually seen across all newspapers this morning, Sunday, is, and we've danced around it, is the Tinubu meeting with Obasanjo. Almost all the papers actually carried it. How significant is that when it comes to his own presidential aspirations?
The excitement, I think, is expected. These are two heavyweights that have not exactly been on the same political pedestal, that have held different perspectives as to how this nation can be governed. They've had different ideologies, and they've stood strongly behind their ideologies, and very accomplished people in their own rights, you know. And if you had followed the comments of the former presidents in recent times, the body language appeared to be drifting away from this candidate who had visited. And so he probably wants to cross rank. This man is from the same geopolitical region as himself. He cannot afford to be taking a punch from home when he has greater battles
to fight
outside the region. So the political calculations are happening. You could see the kind of heavyweights that followed him on that visit. Everybody is making sure that you have every loose end tightened. You don't want to go into a major battle hemorrhaging from punches.
It doesn't make sense.
You know, so great. I'm sure very interesting days lies ahead. They will want to close ranks, and it's not just about Tinubu. We also saw the PDP candidate visit Shehu Kuti after taking some major punch of the social media. So I'm sure we'll continue to see this in the coming days. And let us move quickly to an international paper before we take a wrap on this section, and we'll be looking at the Financial Times. Interesting headlines here on the Financial Times, and the major one there for us, it's soaring UK inflation rises above 10% for the first time in 40 years. You know, price outstripped G7 and most of Europe. Peak forecast at 13%. And BOE set to raise rates. Bank, that is BOE, there is for the Bank of Europe. It's the development is one that is shedding down shock across nerves. Prices have hit rooftops, and the citizens are not finding it funny at all. We have other stories there. Japan's latest advice on alcohol to its younger generation: please drink more. Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
That is quite interesting. That's an interesting
A
one.
very interesting one. It would be good to know what scientific basis would have informed this decision. You know, very interesting offerings there on the front pages of the Financial Times.
All right, well, at this point, we will wrap up the newspaper review for this morning on Daybreak. We'll take a short break, and when we return, the program continues. To stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that they look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
because I have said that.
The rains are here again. Floods are ravaging. Why? As residents of FCT, we have made some wrong choices. Dumping refuse in water channels, building on waterways, damaging water lines, The consequences of flooding can be devastating. Lives are lost, properties are damaged, people are displaced, farmlands are destroyed. Don't make the wrong choices. Don't build on floodplains. Don't dump refuse in waterways. Don't damage water lines. Clear all refuse in waterways around your premises. Together, we can safeguard lives and property. Do the right thing now. For emergencies, please call 112 or 122. This message is from the FCT Emergency Management Agency, FEMA.
Well, it's top of the hour. Hello, good morning and welcome. It is Daybreak on Trust TV. I am Ibrahim Yusuf.
It's a pleasure to have you join us. I am Sunday Michael Ogu.
All right, so we'll go straight to the headlines on top of the hour. Why NNPP couldn't fulfill requests by Shekaro's camp, says Kwankwaso.
Insecurity, Northern youth protest at National Assembly demands NSA sack.
And blasphemy, court dismisses Kanu Singer's appeal, upholds retrial.
Electricity workers suspend strike.
Now to the details, where the presidential candidate of the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, Senator Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, has explained why the party could not meet one of the requests made by the camp of the former Kano State Governor, Malam Ibrahim Shekaro. He also said there is no rift between him and Shekaro, the Kano Central senatorial candidate of the party. Kwankwaso, in an interview with BBC Hausa, said the rumor circulating that both of them have grudges is not true, adding that there is nothing like that in the party. He was reacting to the news that the two-term governor of the state may defect to the People's Democratic Party over an alleged failure to fulfill the terms of agreement they reached prior to Shekaro's defection to the NNPP.
A court of appeal sitting in Kano State has dismissed an appeal filed against a High Court judgment ordering retrial of singer Aminu Sharif Yahya for blasphemy. The court affirmed that the Kano State Sharia Panel Code of 2000 does not contravene Nigeria's constitution. Delivering judgment virtually on Wednesday, Justice Abubakar Muazu Lamido ruled that the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria empowers states through the state assemblies to make laws. He ruled that Nigeria's constitution recognizes that there is freedom of religion, but does not allow adoption of a state religion. Yahya, who was convicted and sentenced to death by a Sharia court in Kano in August 2020, had earlier asked the Kano High Court judge to squash the judgment.
And now, Northern youths under the aegis of Arewa Youth Assembly, AYA, on Wednesday protested at the main gate of the National Assembly, demanding the sack of the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana Munguno, retired, over raging insecurity in the country. The youth argued that the inability of President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration to stem the tide of security challenges is not unconnected to the bad advisors he has on security, adding that under the watch of Munguno, terrorists had been emboldened. Addressing journalists during the protest, the AYA Publicity Secretary Aliu Muhammad maintained that Munguno had failed to foster needed synergy among security forces fighting various criminalities, hence the reason the security agents have face-off. Recall that Munguno was appointed alongside former service chiefs, Chief of Defense Staff General Abayomi Olonishaki, Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, Chief of Naval Staff Vice Admiral Ibok Ete Ibas, and Chief of Air Staff Air Marshal Siddiq Abubakar in 2015.
The leadership of the National Union of Electricity Employees has suspended the strike embarked upon by the union for 2 weeks. The decision was a fallout of the reconciliation or conciliation meeting between the federal government led by the Minister of Labour and Employment, Senator Chris Ngige, and the striking electricity workers, which ended in Abuja on Wednesday. At the end of the 3-hour-long meeting, the workers agreed to suspend the industrial action, which has thrown the country into a total blackout. The workers expressed optimism that the government will listen to the voice of reason and prioritize their welfare and well-being.
All right, and that's that for the headlines at on top of the hour on Daybreak this morning. Before we move on to the reports, Sunday, it's been 1 year.
One interesting
how time flies.
One interesting, eventful and very adventurous here, if you like.
Quite adventurous, really.
You know, we are a baby in the industry, but we never held ourselves by the slightest of standards. We were tasked to do things with global best practice in mind, and we had put out some of the most wonderful, some of the most interesting and intriguing reports.
Yeah, because a lot of people didn't think we could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people thought we had so much expectation, we placed so much pressure on ourselves, and we couldn't actually pull it off. And here we are.
Looking at ourselves after 1 year, as the former Information Minister, Professor Jerry Garner, would say, if nobody sing your praise,
you sing it
you
yourself.
would sing it yourself. Without a doubt, we have done exceedingly well, and it can only get better from this point.
All right, it can only get better. Now let's take some news reports. The cost of carrying out the forensic audit of contracts awarded in the Niger Delta region continues to rise as the Federal Executive Council approved an additional 765.97 million naira for the project. Minister of the Niger Delta revealed this to newsmen at the State House Abuja after the weekly meeting of the cabinet. Now, the amount, he said, would cover the additional works done by the forensic auditors. Kendi Amodu reports.
For the forensic audit, a lead consultant was appointed to work with 16 other field auditors at a total contract sum of 1.786 billion naira. The project has since been concluded, but in the course of carrying out the work, the auditors had to deal with many more projects than were initially envisaged.
The exercise also took an additional 7 months. The total number of additional projects considered by the auditors was 3,773. So for reasons of the additional number of projects and the additional time taken, Council today approved a revised additional sum of 764,974,975 naira 50 kobo.
Meanwhile, another project which has accrued additional cost is the compensation and resettlement of communities affected by the construction of the 700 megawatt Zungeru hydroelectric power project.
The total sum of 2,740 million naira, which will revise the subsisting amount from 19 billion 640 million naira to 22 billion 380 million naira.
Nigerians are concerned about the dip in power supply in recent times, despite promises made by the power minister that the country would be able to generate and maintain 5,000 megawatts of power from the 1st of July.
We've gone very far with that, and I believe it's for that reason that we're able to reach up to 4,600 as of yesterday. In the morning, this morning, it dropped to 4,100. So this is what is happening. You will be experiencing this fluctuation due to all these issues around gas to power, because gas is not something that we control directly. You have to pay them. You have to pay gas. They will not give you gas until you pay. So we are looking at ways to solve that issue. It is the reason why we are unable to reach that 5,000 we promised you by July 1st of this year.
Minister of Information Lai Mohammed is also addressing the issue of the growing inflation rate in the country. The minister gave assurances that government was trying to find its domestic means of stemming inflation. A solution to the global phenomenon varied from government to government. From State House Abuja, Kendi Amodu, Trust TV News.
And moving on to the northeast, train shuttle services between Kano and Nguru local government area of Yobe State has continually sustained centuries-old trade and commercial relations with the Asian cities. Over time, however, this major trade route appears to be dying due to lack of maintenance of the locomotives now operating 3 times in a week. In this special report by Trust TV's Northeast correspondent Idris Jibril, he traveled to the northeastern town of Nguru to examine what remains of the once important train station in northern Nigeria. The report.
After waiting for several hours to witness the arrival of the last remaining train to Guru station from Kano, bad news arrives that the train will not be coming today for operational challenges.
It's the problem of diesel that led to the suspension. But before then, we are running regularly.
Although disappointed, but not as much as the owner of these goods, who now has to resort to what he called the hard and most expensive way to get his goods to Kano.
The train is fine, as they told us, but there is the problem of diesel. That is why we had to use this truck to transport our goods to Kano.
Guru Rail Station was constructed in 1930 by the colonial administrators, initially transporting agricultural produce to the southern part of the country for exports to the United Kingdom. Many years after the Nigeria's independence, train from Guru maintained local running across many parts of the country, effectively creating jobs and boosting the economy.
This train station is important to us. It used to carry people and goods from Guru to Kano and to other parts of Nigeria, and it also creating jobs for our people. This is an old train station that is used to be called Guru Terminus, from where we transport livestock, agricultural produce, granite, and so on to several countries of the world.
But that has changed. Today there is only one train with about 12 coaches operating between 1 to 3 times a week from Guru to Kano.
We do carry people and goods from Guru to Kano and from Kano to Guru, usually 3 times a week. And we never had any problem until this time.
Despite being the cheapest and most secured, especially for small-scale business owners, inconsistency, poor government policies, and lack of maintenance seems to be making things worse for traders using these train services.
Some 30 years ago, this place is considered as a hub of trading activities. Train from different parts of the country do come here on a daily basis. As of today, there is only one train coming here from Kano and going back to Kano from this place. And even that train, authorities are telling us, does not belong to Nguru station. It was borrowed from Mina, Niger State. Now, as of today, there is only few coaches existing in this place. The station is almost gone. There is nothing remained here. Idris Jibrin, Trust TV News, Yobe.
Now, fake and substandard products can be found in almost every category of goods, ranging from drugs, electrical and electronic appliances, and spare parts, among others. Now, in this report, Kabir Lawal finds out how the substandard products menace in the country has crippled some businesses and caused producers to reduce the quality of their products. The report.
So this is what I have in my office. So with this, any form of substandard can be traced in this machine.
Substandard products are simply out of specification products. They are always below the regulatory standard set for making such products. A cross-section of dealers of both spare parts and electrical appliances are called on government and other stakeholders to sensitize the public, especially those in the rural communities, on which goods to buy and how to confirm their authenticity. Uche Unwosu, who sells electrical appliances, wants the government to tighten checks on imported goods at the ports before they are distributed in order to stem the steady influx of substandard tires, spare parts, and drugs in the country.
This side of the country, because of the porousness and also nonchalant attitude of those who are in the hem of their affairs, that allow anything to flow into the country. So that is where you talk about substandard and standard products. And I think the only way we can checkmate this issue of substandard is from the entry point, because sometimes they allow some of all these things to come into the market, or enter into the market, and before you know it, people who are not, people who are ignorant of those substandard, you will see them buying it. And as a result of that, that is where you have some fire outbreak here and there. But in this market anyway, we have a measure that we put in place to checkmate some of all these substandard. And if we are culpable, we have our internal mechanism how we deal with those that are found guilty.
A spare part dealer, Ezekiel Ernest, is of the opinion that there is a heavy chance a substandard product may not just bore a hole in one's pocket, but can also be dangerous physically.
We are dealing with quality products. Many of us here export from China direct, and we are giving the best products in Apo here. You know, like foot mats. Let's come chop foot mats. We identify original foot mats. It can last for you 4 to 5 years in your vehicle. But when you come to all these fake ones, before 1 to 6 months, you start breaking. Do you understand? Some protector.
He added that to understand what constitutes substandard products and find out how they turn out to be a menace to society, people need to appreciate the value of standards and important they are to the society. Kabir Lowell, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Now that's a wrap on the news headlines and reports on Daybreak this morning. We'll take a short break, and when we return, the discussion continues on Daybreak right here on Trust TV. Do stay with us.
Thank you very much. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television, and it is that exciting moment again where we provide deep analysis, conversations around issues that borders on the Nigerian state. This morning, we will be looking at revenues. The revenue generated by the Federal Inland Revenue Service has been growing slower than the expenditure of the federal government in the last 7 years. FIRS revenue collection hit an all-time high of 6.4 trillion in 2021, but Nigeria's fiscal position worsened as the cost of debt service surpassed the Nigerian government's revenue in the first quarter of 2022. Details of the nation's fiscal performance in the first quarter of 2022 show that Nigeria's total revenue stood at 1.63 trillion, while debt service stood at 1.94 trillion, showing a variance of over 300 billion. How can government improve revenue generations to cover its expenditure? We have an expert in the studio, the managing partner, Compliance Professionals PLC, and former chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the ageless Mrs. Ifeku Omugui Okaru. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to see you again.
Same here.
So much has been agitating the mind of the ordinary Nigerian since that medium-term expenditure framework launch, where these revelations came to the fore. Before now, there are analysts and experts like yourself have complained about the fiscal position of the country. And now everybody seems to be on the edge on what lies ahead. Now that it does appear that our debt service has overtaken revenue, we suddenly seem to be issuing a promissory note against future revenues that don't seem to be there. What does the current situation portend for this country from your perspective?
First of all, thank you for inviting me, and congratulations on your anniversary.
Thank you very much.
The question is, what does the current situation, the current fiscal situation, portend for the country? Let me, first of all, say I'm happy that as we progress year by year, the reality is dawning more on people than it was in the past. And that reality is that we can't continue the way we have been doing. I think that summarizes it. In performance management, there are what you call lead and lag indicators. A lag indicator is a result you see, but it has taken time to show up. And by the time you are quoting the results you're talking about, the issues that led to those results didn't start today. It started a long time ago. And that is why, as you want to push for improved performance, be it at a country level, at a company level, at an NGO level, at a family level, whatever the organizational setup you have, it's important you also look at lead indicators. What are those things that will lead you to giving you the results you want? And so just focusing on debt service outperforming revenue is the outcome of several things that may have needed to change. And I think for me, the real issue we should be talking about is, have we started addressing those lead indicators? And I don't think we have.
And talking about starting, there had been all shades of opinion, if you like, as to where to start. So for some, the argument is, we cannot bring this vehicle to a stop because we have to undertake radical changes. Somehow we have to keep the wheel running whilst we replace what needs to be fixed. For others, it has got to a point where we can't continue in this direction. We have to make a radical change. What do you think we need to do as regards starting to head towards what we should do to provide the results that we look forward to?
You know, when you're ill, it starts with a diagnosis. A lot of us, some people have gone to doctors, got a wrong diagnosis, and started working on that diagnosis, only to find out that that's not what they had. And then they start all over again. And I'm sure, listening to me, some would think, oh, but we've been diagnosing the problem for such a long time. And I beg to differ, that we've actually sat down, not as individuals, but as one country, to really think through, and not sitting down to just talk off the top of our heads, but to do what I'll call insightful research, or lean on those who've already done the research to point us as to what are the issues that we need to address. And when you talk about, there are so many different, you said 2 schools of thought. I actually think there are more.
Okay.
There are several schools of thought. You need to do this, you need to do that. Some will say revolution, some will say change the precedent, some will say do this. Perhaps it's all of that in terms of all the things we need to do, but the question is in what order? In what sequence? And I must say that's a question I'm pondering on myself. I can't say that if I speak to you today, I have the solution. But I don't know whether I should be the only one thinking about the solution. I think you bring something to the table, you bring something to the table. The present government will bring something to the table. Past governments will bring something to the table. Those in the trenches, those the soldiers, you know, and you know, in strategy, because really it's about how do we strategize our way out of where we are. And I feel that it's a combination of our culture, who we are as people, and the reality that as a country, we're bringing together diverse groups. Even though the truth is we are diverse in language, we're diverse in the way we dress, but honestly, if I sit back, we're actually the same. But I don't think we realize that. And so we spend a lot of time attacking each other. One thing I believe that would definitely help, and that helps in any institution. It's like a family, like I said, the lead indicators. Let me talk a little bit about what I meant there. A family without a leader can get divided very quickly.
That's right.
But it's not just a leader. It's a strong leader. It's a leader that communicates. Okay, and it's leadership at different levels, because when we say leader, there's the head of the family. But there are also those who work within the family to support the leader. So when the leader speaks, or when the leader says things, you execute. And everybody brings different skills to the table to make that goal happen. We spend a lot more time attacking individuals without spending a lot of time asking ourselves, the system that has evolved the leader, should it change? Are there things we need to do differently? I see us, different people trying to aspire for leadership position, but sometimes I wonder, is it to help? Is it truly to move the country forward, and what therefore are the goals? Or is it for power's sake? And a lot of what I see is people love power. But power for what? And then you step back and you say to yourself, well, how have we groomed leaders? How did people get to where they are? And you look at our school system, and you find out that we don't have one school system. Different systems running, even though we have, supposed to have, one Federal Ministry of Education looking at education, pulling everyone together. But what do I mean by school system? What is school? Is school just the four walls of where you go to, you carry your bag, you say you're going to school? Or is it press school? What you read? Is the media school? What you hear? Are your parents and guardians school? What you listen to at home before you get into that formal? And how many people actually go to that formal system? So we're building leaders from disparate systems, no common ground. And then we're expecting them to all of a sudden perform magic. How would that happen?
All right, now, so if we examine the issues, how we got here, lots of reasons have been bandied about: corruption, lack of poor management of previous administrations, mismanagement of resources that we actually have, oil theft, over-reliance on crude oil, importing petroleum products, and all of these have been actually bandied about as reasons why we got where we are. But the problem is, a lot of people see that these problems are still there. So even if we take other measures to say, okay, fine, this is how we're going to be able to boost our revenue, let's improve our revenue by bringing in more taxes, just like the government is trying to do right now with the telecoms tax. Let's impose more taxes. You'll impose more taxes, probably get more revenue, but those problems that brought us to where we are still there. How how do we reconcile that? How do we make sure that, or how do we put it in perspective that we are not still going back to where we are? Because you're going to impose more taxes, bring more hardship to the people, and then the problems that brought us to where we are now that made you bring in those taxes are still there.
You know, you've hit the nail on the head. And it goes back to what is the root cause. Again, I'd like to use a health example.
Okay.
You say you don't go for the diagnostic. You say you have malaria. So what do? You pump yourself with malaria medicine, but it never goes away. You have headache. You keep taking paracetamol, only to find later that you probably have cancer. By that time you're on stage 4. And so it's going back to what is the root cause of all the issues. So let's take one of the things that we tout a lot. And I remember at the Daily Trust Dialogue earlier this year, and one of the members in the audience said, oh, we're going to tackle corruption. If you recall what I said. I said, how do you hold corruption? How do you hold corruption? It's not measurable. And then when you really think about it, what is corruption? Is it financial corruption? Is it moral corruption? Is it social corruption? It's everywhere. So step back and say to ourselves, let's do something that we can measure. So if it is you want to build road infrastructure, and you know that that's all you want to do, or let me even talk about something more fundamental, power. People don't realize how significant and fundamental. I didn't even realize. I take power more from the perspective of industry, as important for industry, is important for healthcare. Then I started, because I didn't grow up in an agrarian environment. And then somebody said, you're forgetting agriculture, that even provides food. How important power is to process, you know, the grains, even the cassava that turns to gari, you know, and you see how pervasive power is. Even if we just take that and drive that to success, that will at least do something. We can't solve everything at the same time. I think we also need to recognize that. We also need to recognize that where you have problems, because one of the root causes is that we have this shortcut mentality. Things, you say this, it will turn over overnight. It doesn't. It doesn't. Life is not like that. The principle of life, if that's the case, as soon as you are born, you start working.
Exactly.
There is a process. That's the systems thinking we need to look at. There's a process that gets you to a particular point in time, but we always want to shortcut. We need to change that mentality because it affects everything. We're talking of a country now where the majority of the population are the youth, and a lot of them have grown up in an environment that perpetuates that, oh, you can get rich overnight. So we're talking about jobs. They're jobs. But the truth is right now, to get people to do those jobs is tough. Let me give you a story. Today I was just thinking, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to discuss economy. And I said, you know that we're losing a lot of skills. A lot of skills. Now, some will say, oh, no, we can rebuild it. Do you know how long it takes to rebuild skills? Now, that's not to say that if people are angry, they shouldn't do whatever they want to do. There's no doubt about that. You can't stop them. But what's the strategy for harnessing skills? I don't know whether you must be feeling it in the media industry, but there is no sector that is not being hit by the fact that skills are not being built. People want to do things in a hurry. An economy thrives on you having the competence to do whatever you choose to do. And so if I go back to corruption, if we even examine, have we even understood why we are corrupt? So when I talk about diagnosis, why is it so pervasive? Now, I have a hypothesis. I may be wrong. A lot of people are angry. A lot of people feel that they have not been given their due right. And more the majority. And because they've not been given their due right, once they get into, that's what I talk about power. You want to get into position for power, and that's it. Now, this thing that somebody has robbed me of, I now have the opportunity to dictate. That doesn't take us anywhere. So what happens invariably, we're going around in circles. That's what's going on.
Talking about going around in circles, I was listening to some analysts, some economists, and they felt that our basic response in the last 3 years with using the finance bill was to look for a sector to tax. So we're talking about telecom tax today, it's a beverage tax, then SD and all of that. And he feels that tax would not solve the country's revenue problem, even though there are arguments on the other side that tax to GDP ratio is still very low. They talked about selling of dead assets as a way of raising non-interest funds, you know, and stopping the hemorrhage, as it were, with more borrowings. Is that something you subscribe to?
You know, I've been in this line of working on improving Nigeria's economy for a very long time. At least close to 40 years, at least. And the more I hear these kinds of prescriptions, we've been saying it for a very long time, and you prescribe things are done, but guess why it doesn't work? We haven't realized that without a strong ethical base, without sincerity of purpose, all these prescriptions will not solve anything. No country can succeed where those executing ideas, are not of one mind. And so for some, it's about themselves, not for the country, not for the people, not for improving the generality, a mass of people, their quality of life. If we all agree that wherever we are here to improve the quality of life of the people and not our personal pockets or family pockets or solving the problems that my community was not taken care of by the past. So it's my time to solve the community's problem. Let somebody else do it. If we don't build fairness and merit is not to contradict the need for diversity. Merit is not to contradict the need to put everybody on the table. And so if we don't do that without merit, all these prescriptions will not work. Because, okay, so you sell the assets. Who are you selling the assets to? Are you selling the assets to the people who will really work those assets and generate revenue? Or are you selling the assets to your cronies? So it's the prescriptions. If you go through literature, newspapers, articles, 20 years back, it's the same thing we've been saying. So they are fundamentals. And I don't want to just leave it as a value system, because that's just a word.
That's right.
Okay? Because your value and my value may be different. We need to break those things down to saying that until let's first of all recognize that we have to work together and collaborate. You know, something as simple as let's collaborate together as one towards one common purpose. We don't know how to do it.
Well, let me take you on that. You know, drawing life from what you said in your last statements about being in this space for the last 4 decades. And the average Nigerian would ask, is it for the lack of understanding of this problem on the part of leadership? or the unwillingness on the part of, because I mean we see their resumes. If the value systems are lacking here, they schooled in some of the finest institutions in the world. They've been to systems that work. What is so difficult in transporting this knowledge or vitalizing or appropriating this knowledge when it comes to policy and the discharge of the, what have you seen, haven't played at such extreme level?
Okay, one thing I know for sure now, I'm going to be 60 soon, and I've been putting down my thoughts as to if I were to communicate what I've learned over time. Education and knowledge is not just about going to school. You know the funny thing, you may actually have someone who is actually a better qualified leader when you look at what he was taught, not necessarily in school, by his mentors, by the coaches. They've taught you the principles of humanity. They've taught you the principles of merit and fairness. Those things that hit you in the ear doesn't come out. They've taught you fair play. They've taught you to be goal-oriented. What our schools do is they teach you physics, geography, maths, history, literature, but not how do you live together. I've discussed a basic thing as just working together. Let me give a story. Okay, I didn't even finish the other story I was talking about. These days now, you invite, in fact, it was bad before, but it's getting worse now. You invite a plumber to your house. You finish, well, I finished, the problem has not gone. You call him back. He's working hard, but he doesn't have the skills. The last one, we brought some electrician to fix the bulb. So there was something wrong because it was sparking. Now we can't turn off the light. It's happening more and more now. It's happening more and more now. So let me go back to the question about going to school. There are certain things that we need to re-examine our educational curriculum around and the way we teach. Because I also said, when people ask me, if there's one thing that we need to change, I would say it's education. But it's not education from the perspective of you want to read more about the subjects. That's important. But how do we work as teams in the school environment? The way we teach now is to pass exams. And so what people now do is they cheat. They do anything they want. They want that score. But is life about the score? Or is life about the process? We are forgetting the process to getting the results. So people, so going back, is it understandable? They don't understand. Honestly, I've come to that conclusion. Deep down, we don't understand what it takes, and it will take us it will take a long time. But we should not give up because it will take a long time. If you think about the Chinas of this world, the Indias of this world, even at their stage of development, some of the things they're doing now started 1940s. So, and that's why I'm saying, have we started? So I don't think we understand. I don't think we understand the implication of not doing group work in school. I don't think we understand the implication of having a lot of children who don't go to school to learn these things and who are also abandoned at home. Because in other environments, they encourage homeschooling if you can't go to, but we don't understand the implication of years of depriving so many people who now have children and children have children of education and the anger some people are also bringing to the table. We don't understand those things and how those things play in policy making, in the decision, because ultimately the test of the leader is not so much that you have become the leader. And by the way, when I say leader, it's at every level. It's the decisions you take.
And let's talk about some of those decisions now.
Yes.
We reeled out lots of things. We're spending so much money to service the debts that we actually have, and we're not making enough money. So my question is two-pronged. The first one is quite simple. Can we authoritatively say that Nigeria is broke? And we don't seem to have any other option now because we're not generating enough revenue and we need money to actually run the country, so we borrow. And we keep borrowing and using the little that we generate to service what we're borrowing, and we borrow again. And we keep on doing that. How do we break this cycle?
It's complicated. Honestly, it's complicated. And I'm not even sure this program would take us into all the different dimensions to look at. And, you know, let me see, if you put yourself in the shoes of government, you will borrow.
Okay.
Why? Because if you don't borrow, you don't have any cash to spend. Did you get?
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, you want to ask yourself, are we borrowing to generate more revenue? What is on the table? And again, I'm not in government, and I know that when you're not in government, there's a tendency you read things, they'll tell you, no, that's not what the reality is, but let me tell you what is out there in the space. Borrowing to pay salaries, borrowing to pay people who say they're being owed money 20 years. So you're borrowing to pay debt, not debt. And those borrowings is, for example, the recent thing on the table, this issue of paying consultants. You know, one of the things when I was in FRS was to, you know, stop consultants at the door. But now we're talking about money to be paid to a few consultants. And you ask yourself, did the consultants improve the system? Did they make the system better? No. So I'm going back to the issue that it's a catch-22. You need the money, but it's also important that as we borrow what will give us more revenue in the future, not cash. Because if it's, and I'm trying to distinguish between revenue and cash. Revenues, my definition of revenues, come from systems that are sustainable, that, you know, that replicate themselves and they grow and they improve, they regenerate, thank you, over time. I think where we need to start halting the brakes is borrowing because of cash.
Isn't that what we're doing now?
That's what we're doing now. Okay. And cash takes you nowhere. Because it's coming back to haunt you. Because it doesn't regenerate. Cash is paper. You spend it. Once it's spent, it's
so
gone.
even the borrowing that we're borrowing now is actually part of the problem.
I want to distinguish between the act of borrowing and what you are borrowing for.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? So the borrowing, where there's no revenue and you need to borrow to help that revenue grow, is good.
Very good.
Seriously. And but again, I'm saying it's complicated because it's not as simple as it sounds, as I'm sounding. Okay, so even if you want, it's a systems. I will keep on mentioning, and I hope that's one thing that comes out of this, that to step back and take a systems, because in a system, what you do here affects the other thing. And I think that it's not the borrowing that is bad. I think we need to be more systems driven in what we do. And if I go back to FRS when I was there, and that's a very long time ago, there's a tendency for people to just sort of look at what was done in FRS in isolation. And I would take credit for the amount of work that was done, and we all came together as a team to work on it, but it was not in isolation. It was part of a larger system. And so you turn this way, somebody else is doing something else, complementing that. You turn that way, somebody else. And that's not to say that it was perfect, because life is not perfect. You get things to a point. That's another thing that we need to improve on. Systems thinking again. Everybody will bring to the table their strength. But what do we do when the next person comes in? Do we build on it, or do we start again? And another thing that we have been doing is that there's a tendency, and I don't know whether it's just us, to always look at the weaknesses. You know, I was talking to you about what's your daily trust vision, where are you going, and you talked about you want to do positive, even though I must say there's so much negatives. I want to urge the media to please see how you can increase the positives you project. Because there's a tendency, systems thinking again, the more negative you project, the more negative you're going to get. You know, so we need to be more deliberate, you know, communicate more. We're not doing a lot of communication. I was reading Segun Adeni's column, I think he wrote it yesterday, talking about the water resources bill and what he had written, and how the minister himself admitted that one thing they have not done is communication, and that they are going to go ahead doing whatever they want to do, and Segun saying that he has understood better. But that's Segun in a column I read that how many people have access to. The other thing that we need to recognize, and I think the reason perhaps people even know what FIRS was about or what we're doing, was because we had this regular program every week, talking, you know, about what we're doing, getting everybody involved, explaining, you know, because of the, again, I'm not excusing, but I've also realized that people don't even want to communicate anymore, because you communicate, they don't even believe you. Even when you are sincere, but that's because there's so much distrust. So that's why I said it's
a system thing.
It's system. It's a complicated thing, and to break it, you have to start somewhere and just develop a thick skin and just keep doing what you need to do.
Talking about developing thick skin and communicating more, I would just, for the purpose of this conversation, have you, as somebody who needs to advise the president, what do you think on the short to medium term that we need to fix to begin this whole, I wouldn't call it a revolution, movement that would lead us to manifest the kind of future that we want? In bullets, what are those things you think we're not doing right, we should take out? And what are those things we should begin to do now to begin to change outcomes?
I think, first of all, I want to say that to the president. We love our country. We love our country. Even those that are leaving, those that are complaining, those that are attacking on Twitter. And so we love our country. You know, we're one family. We're one family, regardless of where we come from. Whether it's Edo, which is where I am, Lagos, where I was born, FCT, where I work, or anywhere else. Sometimes you get the feeling that we're fighting ourselves. We need to bring us all together. And I'm not saying that with lip service. We need to realize that the decisions we take could communicate wrong signals. And if you come across as, and that may not be the way you are, but if people feel that that is the perception, we need to change that perception. And we need to start encouraging ourselves and not hitting ourselves. and building an identity of one Nigeria, where everyone has a sense that that country is for them.
What a way to bring this conversation to a close. We have been talking with the former chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, who has provided various perspectives on what we need to do to get to the desired Nigeria, not the one we currently live in, far from what the founding fathers of this nation had envisaged for the kind of potentials that we have. And she has given a perspective in various, she has given her prescriptions on what needs to change, what we need to do, what we need to stop, and what we need to do differently. I have been speaking with Mrs. Ifuako Omuigwe Okaru. I hope I got the pronunciation correctly this time, and if not, I hope you forgive me.
No problem at all.
Thank you very much on this show, and I hope when next we call, this conversation will continue from here. It's been a pleasure having you in the studio, and I said to her before this show started that she had remained ageless. She's sort of find a way to put a stop on age. She's been like this since I knew her. I'm not sure about you at home. And long may it continue, and happy birthday in advance.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll come for that 60th time.
Yeah, certainly. Certainly. That is the senior citizen category. It's been a pleasure to have you join us from home on what has been a very delightful start to a Thursday. We wish you the best of what the day has ahead. I am Sunday Michael Ogu. Let's do this again tomorrow.
All right, that's it on Daybreak for this morning. I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Enjoy the rest of your day.